Well, folks, we're into day 4 of this little mini transfer window, and are Newcastle United about to make their first move, with Joao Pedro heavily linked to the club in the last couple of days. However, the player has issued a message to any potential new team, so we'll take a look at what that might mean for Eddie Howe. Jonathan David has also spoken out. He is still yet to sign with a new side. Serie A was looking like his reported preferred destination. However, is there a possibility that Newcastle could maybe swoop in and sign the Canadian international? And of course, with the Champions League coming up next season, homegrown quota is very important for the side. Are Newcastle United about to bring some of the old guard back? Let's take a look. Hi everybody and welcome back to the Toon Review YouTube channel. My name is Paul. This is your latest Newcastle United news. And we'll start off with Joao Pedro because it's clear that Newcastle United still have an interest in the player. Of course, we all remember Fabrizio's tweet a couple of seasons ago saying, here we go, deal was agreed with Newcastle United. And then he signed for Brighton. It was a complete mess up. I don't know where Fabrizio got his information from. But of course, the rest is history now. And he went to perform really well for Brighton. However, there's been a falling out down there. And it is expected that Joao Pedro will leave this coming summer. Now, Newcastle United seem to have reignited that interest. But it was reported last night that Brighton were looking at a valuation of around about 100 million quid. Now, everybody that was watching the live show last night completely disagreed with that valuation and thought maybe Brighton were asking a little bit far, well, not just a little bit, far too much money for Joao Pedro. Despite the fact that he is a very, very good player, there's no doubt about that. £100 million for me is a huge stretch. Lots of people in the live last night were saying around about 50 to 60 million pounds, which seemed a little bit more doable, certainly for Newcastle United. But another problem that Eddie Howe may have is the player himself has reported that any club that he will go to, he wants to be first choice striker. He believes that at his age now and the skills that he offers, he wants to be in the starting lineup as a number one striker. And of course, we know the problems that will come for Eddie Howe to try and convince Joao Pedro to sign because Alexander Isak is the number one striker. And that is not going to change unless, bizarrely, we sold Isak. And we know that's not going to happen now. So what does Eddie Howe do here? The player himself saying he wants to be first choice striker. But we are going to have this problem, guys. We are going to have this problem over and over again, aren't we? Because, you know, any striker that's potentially going to come to Newcastle United, such as the quality of Joao Pedro, is going to want first-team football. There's no doubt about that. And if we're looking at players of the quality of Pedro, then they're all going to want to be in the first team. They're all going to want to play first-team football. Now, what Eddie Howe could do is he could switch it around and say, well, yes, you will get first-team football. You won't be getting first-team football every week because we are going to rotate the side, because we will need a lot of rotation next season when we're in Europe and all the other competitions that we're playing in. There's a lot of games. And lessons simply have to be learned from last time we were in the Champions League, which, of course, you know, the squad was threadbare and we barely got through the season. So we don't want that to happen again. But when you're looking at players of Joao Pedro's quality, how does Eddie Howe convince him that he's got to come in alongside Isak? Because the report says Isak's presence could be an issue if Pedro will only join a team where he'll be first choice. Although his versatility and ability to play wide or in an advanced midfield role may increase his chances of regular game time on Tyneside. So, yes, he's a striker. He wants to be number one striker, but he does have that versatility to play on the wing. But again, I think it's, you know, we're talking about moving Barnes or Gordon or whatever it may be. We're stacked on that side. I don't know about playing on the right-hand side. I'm not so sure myself. But I still think we need an out-and-out right winger to come into that position and not Joao Pedro. He's more of a striker. Now, we saw, we've done him on transfer shows. We know where his quality is. He could bring a lot to this side. But it's going to be a big, big challenge for Eddie Howe to get a striker in. We know we're going to need one. Callum Wilson is almost certain to leave. Will Asula, I don't think Eddie Howe's 100% on where he's going to play Asula. And is he going to put him out on loan next season? Is he going to keep him around in the first team squad? Nobody knows what Eddie Howe's going to do, but he does face a huge dilemma. Now, it is said that he's brilliant. He's best mates with Bruno. That could help convince him to come to Newcastle. But are Newcastle United going to push for this player? The report says he's a highly valued for his versatility, being able to play in a number of attacking roles, much like former target, of course, Matheus Cunha. So over the next coming weeks of the window, you'd hope we can still sell him a move to St James's Park, even if he's not guaranteed to lead the line every week. And this is what I've just been talking about. It's about talking to him about Europe. It's about the Champions League. It's about playing in that elite competition. It's about showing him the stadium. It's about showing him videos of the fans, the absolute joy of winning the trophy. He could be part of that. And that's what we've got to try and convince these players to come, even though there's already an elite player in his position, but he is versatile. It says a move away from Brighton could be a win-win for all parties involved. We, of course, need much-needed depth to our attack, and Pedro's chances of playing time remain high. But at Brighton, of course, he's fallen out with the manager, and that is a big problem. How do you get that relationship balance back on track when there's been a big falling out? And it's been a public falling out as well. It is very difficult for somebody to bounce back from that. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you're not a team player within that manager's thinking, you won't get in. Now, does this give an indication that maybe Joao Pedro has a bit of an attitude problem or a chip on his shoulder? We don't know that because we don't know the ins and outs of what's gone on at Brighton. What we do know is that Eddie Howe wants players to come into that dressing room who will keep the harmony there. He won't want any prima donnas or anybody like that coming into the dressing room and spoiling the sort of morale he's already got in there. We know that. He said that in public. And I just wonder if Joao Pedro is the type of player that might just rock the boat a little bit if he's fallen out with staff at Brighton. But it could have been for anything. We said this about Anthony Gordon, didn't we? In saying, his attitude's this, his attitude's that. But he's come to Newcastle United, and yet despite his form being a bit rocky this season, he's had a brilliant attitude. So I don't picture a problem with Joao Pedro either. I think if Eddie Howe thought there was going to be a problem with the player, then we wouldn't go for him. But for me, it's the valuation as well. I don't think Newcastle United will pay more than 50 to 60 for Joao Pedro if Brighton give us the go-ahead to speak to him. £100 million for me is completely out the door. It also depends on Pedro himself and his wage demands. We've seen this already with Bryan Mbeumo. He's been offered quadruple his wages at Manchester United. That's not going to happen at Newcastle. And it's clear for everybody now that will not happen. We will not go above a certain limit. So this deal is still way off, guys, if I'm openly honest. I don't know if it'll happen or not because Brighton, they're perfectly in their rights to value their players at whatever they want. But that's going to make it much more difficult for Newcastle United to go in there and say, we'll offer 50 to 60 when they value the player at 100. That's a big gap, guys, to try and negotiate. So who knows? Who knows? But at the moment, the problem is we've got such a world-class striker in Isak. A lot of the other strikers that we're interested in are looking elsewhere because they don't want to have that kind of competition for places. They want to be the starting striker. And you can understand that in a way. You can also understand people saying, well, hang on a minute, you're supposed to be a professional footballer. Get in there and fight for your place and prove that you're good enough. But when you move to a new club, and certainly if we're going to pay that amount of money for a player, you would expect him to be in the starting lineup. So let me know what you think Eddie would do in this circumstance. Now, another Newcastle United target has, of course, for a long time now been Jonathan David. And maybe he would be the perfect answer to everything. Free transfer, wouldn't cost a penny. Obviously can offer him more wages that way without having to pay a transfer fee. And he's wanted by top clubs. And it was, I think, last week or the week before, it came out that his preferred destination was Serie A, Napoli sniffing around, and Juventus as well. Juventus strongly linked with a move for him. However, he has said that his next team needs to be, there needs to be a process and an ambition. So this is what he actually said. He said, I want a club with ambition that wants to do something. Obviously, I would love to fight for titles and to win titles. A team that's competitive, that has ambition, really with a good sporting project. Now, Newcastle United fit the bill on everything he's just said there. And the report goes on to say, when you talk about sporting projects, there are a few more exciting than Newcastle United. So again, is this an opportunity for us to go and sort of maybe just change his mind on going to Serie A and saying, look, there is a perfect opportunity for you to come here and be an absolute legend, be a hero. You know, the fans want you. You know, look at the whole arena. There is a project in here that could make us one of the top teams in Britain in years to come and Europe. You are coming to someone that has a project, a process, an ambition, everything that fits the bill. And you know what? This is how we are going to have to go out there and sell the club. And yes, of course, we'll have people at the club at the moment who will be professional at this. They will know how to go and sell the club. Eddie Howe is the main man who will sell the club or sell the club to the player. There's no doubt about that. If he meets the player, I think Eddie Howe could sell sand to the Arabs. He's got that in him. But at the moment, Jonathan David, I think, is focused on Serie A more than anything. It does go on to say that this could be the wrong time for Newcastle United and Jonathan David because he's not on course to become part of our project because talk is he's going to Italy and mainly Juventus. But we are going to have to fight these teams, guys. We are going to have to fight these teams in the transfer window for every single player that we look at. It's not just a case of one team being interested in a player. When we are going for elite players now, we are going to get into a battle with a lot of elite teams around Europe. And we have to build, we have to keep building, but somehow we have to convince these players to come to the club. And yes, it hasn't worked so far in the transfer window. Clearly, we were interested in Delap. Were we interested in Buemo? That's all up in the air. But if we were, he wants to go to Manchester United. So money's an issue for wages, but this, because it's a free transfer, gives us an option. It still looks likely that he's going to snub a move to the Premier League, and they feel like the only black and white shirt, according to this report, is Juventus. But you just never know. He's got so much quality. And again, this could be a big letdown because obviously we're talking about players that we've been linked with for a while. Joao Pedro and Jonathan David, they've been on the radar. There's no doubt about that. We've had them watched. But it's selling the club. It's making that final push for the player. But what Jonathan David said there gives you a little bit, is the door slightly ajar to convince him to come to the Premier League and Newcastle United. It would be a hell of a signing, but can we do it? That is the question. Now, of course, moving into the Champions League next season, we do need home quota players. And, we were laughing on the live shows the other day about certain players coming back. And it got to a bit of a joke where we were talking about players from the 80s and 90s coming back and things like that. However, there is multiple media reports today that Newcastle United will bring back either Tim Krul or Fraser Forster. Now, Fraser Forster, he didn't really get to the first team when he was at Newcastle United. Of course, he came through the ranks, but he's a homegrown. And Tim Krul, obviously, a long time at Newcastle United, big favourite. This is to try and get the homegrown quota sorted. Now, does that give an indication that maybe Sean Longstaff is leaving? I don't know. But rather than spend a lot of money on certain players, bulk up the squad with free transfers like a Tim Krul or a Fraser Forster. I don't know what the hell is going on with goalkeepers, guys, if I'm openly honest. Nick Pope is still apparently undecided whether he wants to move away. You've got Dubravka there, you've got Vlachodimos, you've got Gillespie, you've got John Ruddy. Now, I am hearing rumblings this morning that John Ruddy will be leaving the club. I'll be a bit disappointed, to be honest, because I think John Ruddy's done a good job as like a coach. Whether he'd be offered that kind of role with Newcastle United, time will tell on that. But he is expected to leave. Gillespie, I don't know what the hell he's still doing at the football club. His contract, I think, runs out this summer, but whether we extend it again so he can keep filling the social diaries, who knows? But we need to do something with goalkeepers, especially if we're going to bring one of the old guard back in to make up for homegrown talent. But certainly Tim Krul, the name of Tim Krul has been bandied around a lot this morning with the possibility of returning to Newcastle United. So it's incredible, isn't it? You know, we're looking to try and take the club to the next level and bring in these elite players that we're talking about. And then For homegrown quota, we have to go back to the old guard. I mean, don't get me wrong, Tim Krul would probably love the opportunity to come back to Newcastle. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think the fans would mind that, Tim Krul coming back, as long as we get rid of a few of the goalkeepers who are stacked up at the moment. That's a big problem for us. Vlachodimos is going to be a massive problem because who the hell do we sell him to? Who's going to pay for him? You know, apparently we paid £30 million for him. 30 million quid. I know it was all to do with PSR, but in the end, 30 million quid. I mean, Christ on a bike. Who's going to pay that for him? We're never getting the money back like that for him. So the probability is that he will go out on loan. And then Gillespie surely is going to get released. And the possibility of John Ruddy. So that's 3 gone. So that would enable us to bring in a Tim Krul or a Fraser Forster to make up the homegrown talent. So we'll see what happens with that. But as usual, let me know what you think of all the stories below in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, as usual, please give it a like. And of course, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. We are now on the way to 40,000. I never thought I'd ever say that, but we are on the way to 40,000 now, guys. So please do subscribe if you're new to the channel. It's a wonderful community to be part of. So don't forget to hit that notification bell as well so you never miss an upload or a video. And of course, check the website out, thetoonreview.com, for all your Toon Review merchandise. We will see you very soon, guys. Take care.